Hi, my name is Drew Gatchang, and I'm with Ann Arbor Pioneer BSU, and today I will be reading Jimi Sounds Like a Rainbow by Gary Golio, illustrated by Javaka Steptoe, and this is a story about the young Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Sounds Like a Rainbow, a story of the young Jimi Hendrix. Seattle, Washington, 1956. Electricity ripped through the air. A lightning flash lit up the room. Thunder rocked the house. Jimmy's hand jumped, and a rainbow of colored pencils went tumbling to the floor. Outside, rain began trickling off the roof and plinking into the metal gutter. Drops bounced onto the windowsill. A breeze rippled the glass chimes on the porch. For a moment, Jimmy thought he heard a woman's name being blown in the wind. Jimmy grabbed his one-string ukulele. He could play only simple tunes, but now he had a new idea. He pulled the string and let it snap back, tapping gently with his finger, up and down the neck, to get just the right notes. Over and over, until he could play the sound of raindrops, singing as they fell. After the storm, Jimmy stepped out onto the porch of the boarding house where he and his father lived. Down the street, a child was laughing, squealing like a clarinet on one of Dad's big band records. A truck engine backfired, pounding like a bass drum, as a neighbor's rake played snare against the sidewalk. A dog yowled, a siren wailed in the distance, and a bird rattled off a string of high wild notes. The sounds of life were calling out, and Jimi Hendrix wanted to answer them. Terry and Potato Chip waved from across the street. They loved Jimmy's drawings, the funny stories he told, the way he could imitate guitars and trumpets with his mouth and hands. And they never teased him about his worn-out clothes and wild hair the way some kids did, or because he was always moving from one part of town to another when Dad was out of work. They were the Three Musketeers, best friends for life. Down at the record store, the boys checked out the top 10 hits each week. Crazy about music, they would chatter for hours about the latest rock and roll songs. Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and B.B. King. The airwaves were sizzling with exciting new sounds and rhythms. Sometimes Jimmy and his friends bicycled down to the lake, a magical place of deep green leaves and dark purple shadows. They'd throw rocks in the water, listening to them plop and gurgle as they sank. All around, there were birds singing, bees buzzing, and breezes whistling through the trees. Above the clouds, airplane engines droned and whirred. With every sound, a color glowed in Jimmy's mind. Blue was the whoosh of cool water splashing over rocks. Orange and red, the crackling of a campfire. Green, the rustle of 1,000 leaves. At home, Jimmy drew and painted for hours. He filled pages with sleek, fin spaceships, knights on horseback, fierce Indian chiefs, and castles in the clouds. A teacher even let him cover the blackboards once with chalk drawings of Mexico in bold, blazing yellows, purples, and reds. Jimmy's imagination was on fire, and a tune was always playing in his head. At night, he listened to Dad croon along with gospel, jazz, or blues records on the old phonograph. A song by Muddy Waters, with its wailing guitar and harmonica, set off fireworks in his mind. He wondered, could a person use music like chalks and colored pencils? Could someone paint pictures with sounds? Sweeping up his room one day, Jimmy stopped and held the broom in his arms. He strummed on the bristles, sliding his fingers back and forth along the wooden handle. Was this what it felt like to hold a real guitar? To swing it up and down? To make music while you sang? On the radio, Elvis Presley's hit Hound Dog shook the speaker. Elvis was the king, twisting and shouting to the beat of rock and roll. Jimmy strummed the broom again. Pieces of straw went flying into the air as he wiggled his hips like Elvis and sang his heart out for an imaginary audience of screaming fans. Sitting on the porch one night, Jimmy watched as the landlady's son cradled a worn wooden guitar in his lap and began to sing. The man's voice was dark and smooth like velvet. The blues day is a lonely sound, like the whistle of a train, full of tender feelings and pouring down like the rain. Notes spun from the strings, flickering in the air like fireflies. Jimmy's eyes shone. He could feel the music tingling in his fingertips. When the landlady's son offered him to sell his guitar for $5, Jimmy begged Dad to buy it. Now he had an instrument of his own. Night after night, he'd sit alone in his room, plunk, plunk, plunking along for hours. On a small transistor radio, Jimmy tuned in his favorite songs and learned them note for note. From Dad's old blues records, he soaked up the gritty sounds of guitar masters Lightnin' Hopkins and Howlin' Wolf. He practiced and practiced, training his ears and hands, and each day he got a little better. Before long, Jimi could play the guitar while Potato Chip sang, or jam with Terry as his fingers tickled the keys of an old piano in the basement. Every note and every chord was like a new color for Jimi. He had a rainbow of sounds at his fingertips, and he wanted to paint the world with them. Soon, Jimi played well enough to join a local band, but when he first performed on stage, the screaming saxophone, pounding drums, and rocking piano drowned out his old wooden guitar. He felt invisible. If he wanted to be heard, he'd need a louder guitar, an electric guitar. Money was tight, but Dad could see what music meant to his son. It may have been the cheapest model, but to Jimi, his new white Supro Ozark guitar was pure gold. Now, he could plug into an amplifier, turn up the volume, and hold his own in the band. With a flick of a switch, Jimi's life was electrified. Practicing at a friend's house one day, Jimi heard the amplifier making strange and eerie sounds. Out of the speaker came buzzes and whistles, fuzzy hissing, and a raspy humming. Strumming the guitar made the noises shift and change. By turning knobs and stretching guitar strings, Jimi found that he could play with the different sounds. He ran his fingers up and down the neck, tapping and scraping, plucking, sliding, and picking. Then a smile flashed across his face. Suddenly, the room filled with a rocket's roar, crashing waves, the buzz of swarming bees. Jimi was finally painting with sound. Like no one before him, Jimi Hendrix taught his guitar to sing, scream, laugh, and cry. He learned to use it as an artist uses paint, creating new worlds with the colors of sound. To the heart and soul of the blues, he added the restless energy of rock and roll. His playing became bold as lightning, wild as the waves, free as the wind through the trees. Dressed in the colors of the rainbow, he played for audiences far and wide, joining fiery sounds with tender feelings and painting the world with his songs. Don't let nobody turn you off from your own thoughts and dreams. Jimi Hendrix. I've been Drew Gottschang, and on behalf of BSU Reads, I want to thank you for listening to my story today.